My name is Aiden. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, my family assumed I was the kind of person who would quietly step aside whenever things became complicated. I was the agreeable one, the calm one, the one who never raised his voice or caused discomfort. And maybe, at one point, that description fit me. But everything changed when my grandparents passed away and left their entire estate to me. The house, the savings, the investment shares, valued just under $900,000. Something inside me shifted the moment I learned that. I began paying closer attention. I started listening more carefully to what people said and to what they didn't say. And most importantly, I began planning, because I knew exactly the kind of people I was related to. My younger brother, Tyler, is 3 years behind me in age. He's loud, charming, flashy, the kind of guy who can lie straight to your face and still convince you to loan him $5,000 for a guaranteed opportunity. He'd been skating through life for years. Credit cards opened in our mother's name, a borrowed car that mysteriously never came back. One disaster after another, and every time Mom swooped in to clean it up, she always said he was just finding himself. Me? I was expected to be the opposite, the reliable one, the fallback plan, the safety net. And was done with that role. When my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, 1 year after my grandmother, his will left everything solely to me. It didn't shock me. I had been the one who showed up when everyone else disappeared. I took them to doctor appointments. He handled groceries, bills, paperwork, everything that quietly piles up when people grow old. Tyler, on the other hand, showed up once a year at Christmas, snapped a few photos for social media, and vanished until the next holiday. But when the will was read and my name was the only one listed, I noticed the look on my mother's face. Tight-lipped, displeased, like I had taken something that didn't belong to me. That was when I knew trouble was coming. The biggest piece of the inheritance was the house. It was a stunning old Victorian, deep red brick, tall narrow windows, ivy climbing up the walls like something pulled from a period film. The property had been passed down for 3 generations, and my grandparents had maintained it with obsessive care. The neighborhood around it had exploded in value over the last decade. Nearly every nearby house had been gutted and flipped for profit. My grandparents never sold. Now it belonged to me. I didn't move in right away. I kept my apartment across town and quietly began putting everything in order. I had the house professionally appraised. I consulted an estate attorney. Then I set up a trust, not just for the house, but for everything. I didn't tell anyone, not my mother, not Tyler, no one. I secured the original deed in a protected location. I transferred the house, the assets, the savings, everything, into an irrevocable trust, with myself named as trustee. He even moved the utility accounts under a business name tied directly to the trust. It cost more money, but I didn't hesitate. He knew my family too well. I knew they would try something. For a while, nothing happened. And honestly, that silence was the most unsettling part. Tyler sent a few casual texts, asking if he could swing by and use the pool sometime. The house didn't have a pool. My mother dropped comments in passing. How unfair it was that everything went to one person. how families weren't supposed to work that way. Once, she even said, "You know your brother was always your grandfather's favorite," as if that somehow rewrote legal reality. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and changed the subject. I let them believe I was careless, unprepared. Still the same quiet, accommodating version of myself. That illusion held until last month. Tyler started posting cryptic updates on social media. Phrases like "big things coming" and "next chapter loading." The kind of vague hype that meant nothing but was clearly meant for someone to notice. Then one Saturday afternoon, I was at the house pulling weeds and trimming hedges when I saw my mother's car turn into the driveway. Tyler jumped out first, sunglasses on, grinning like he'd arrived at a launch party. My mother followed behind him, holding a clipboard, smiling the way people do when they think they're about to close a deal. "Hey, man," Tyler said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "We've got some news." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Mom stepped forward. "We spoke to a lawyer," she said. "And it turns out the house should have gone to both of you. Your grandfather never updated the will properly after your grandmother passed. But don't worry, we handled it." I stared at her. "Handled what?" Tyler reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded document, waving it in the air like a winning a lottery ticket. "We transferred the title into my name. It's already done." Then casually, like he was talking about changing a cable plan, he added, "You'll need to be out by Friday. No hard feelings. We'll give you time to grab your stuff." I didn't react right away. I just looked at them, first Tyler, then my mother, taking in their expressions. The confidence, the smug certainty, the absolute audacity. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't scared. If anything, I felt an almost inappropriate urge to laugh. They really thought I was that stupid. I smiled instead. Small, polite, the kind of smile that makes people uneasy. "You really think I'd let that happen?" I asked. Tyler laughed. "It's already happening, dude. You've been living in a fantasy." Mom softened her voice, like she was trying to guide a child through disappointment. "We're not trying to hurt you, Aiden. This is just practical. Tyler can manage the property. Maybe sell it. You already have your own place. This way, everyone benefits." I nodded slowly. "Got it." That was all I said. 2 days later, they came back. This time, they didn't come alone. A moving truck rolled up the driveway early that morning, followed by a second car. Tyler sat in the passenger seat, sipping coffee like this was just another errand. My mother stood outside, clipboard in hand, confidently directing 2 hired movers toward the front door, as if she had done this 100 times before. I had been expecting them. They pulled in laughing, talking over one another, completely convinced the house was already theirs. Then they noticed the porch. I was standing there, arms folded, beside a tall man in a navy blue suit. He held a thick folder under his arm. A badge was clipped neatly to his belt. The name on the folder wasn't one they recognized. The badge was real. The suit was real. And the man. He worked for the county office of property records. Everything stopped. Tyler stepped out of the car first, confusion spreading across his face. "What's going on here?" I didn't answer. The man beside me did. He cleared his throat calmly, the way someone does when they've dealt with enough dramatic situations that none of it phases them anymore. He glanced at the document in his hand, then looked up. "Are you Tyler Green?" he asked. Tyler hesitated. "Yeah, who's asking?" The man stepped forward slightly. "My name is Mr. Levan. I'm with the County Office of Property Records. I'm here on behalf of the legal trustee of the East Thornhill estate." He gestured behind him toward the house. "Our records show that this property has been held in an irrevocable trust since April of last year, under the management of Aidan Green. Any claim of ownership made after that date, including an attempted title transfer, is not only invalid, but legally considered fraud." The color drained from Tyler's face. "Fraud?" he muttered, turning to my mother. "What is he talking about?" My mother stepped forward quickly. "There must be some kind of mistake," she said, her voice tight. "We had a lawyer review the deed. It was still in my father's name." "We assumed. You assumed wrong," I said, finally speaking. I stepped off the porch slightly so they could see me clearly. "I never held the property in my personal name. It belongs to a trust. That's why you couldn't find it in the public record. You took an outdated document and tried to force a transfer through a sketchy title service." Mr. Levan nodded. "A fraud report has already been filed regarding the attempted transfer. Given the circumstances, arriving with movers, threatening eviction, and attempting to take possession, we are proceeding directly with enforcement." Tyler blinked. "Enforcement?" It turned toward him, my voice level and steady. "It means if you step onto this property again without my permission, you're trespassing. If you attempt to interfere with the trust or any of its assets, you'll be facing criminal charges." No one spoke. The movers stood frozen between the truck and the porch, glancing at each other like they'd walked into something they absolutely did not want to be involved in. One of them cleared his throat and slowly backed toward the van. Tyler finally broke the silence. "You're really doing this to your own family?" I didn't raise my voice. Family doesn't show up with forged documents and a moving crew to steal someone's home. My mother clenched her jaw. "They were confused," she said sharply. "They didn't understand what they were doing." "No," I replied. "You didn't understand. You thought I'd still roll over. The same kid you could guilt into fixing Tyler's mistakes or covering his debts. Just this once. But that kid doesn't exist anymore." Mr. Levan flipped another page in the folder. "For clarity, local law enforcement has been notified. If either party attempts to return under any claim of ownership, civil and criminal files will already be prepared." Tyler didn't argue. He snapped at the movers. "We're leaving." They didn't hesitate. My mother lingered for a moment, as if she wanted to say something. Maybe one last attempt at control. But nothing came out. Then she turned and followed him. The truck pulled away, disappearing down the hill. The house went quiet again. After they left, the silence felt heavier than before. Mr. Levan handed me a copy of the filed report and told me to call immediately if they showed up again. I thanked him. When he drove away, I stayed on the porch for a long time, staring at the street where my family's car had disappeared. That was the same porch where I used to sit with my grandfather while he talked about people, about learning to recognize patterns instead of believing words. He used to say that the truth of someone's character shows itself when they think no one is paying attention. He had been right. I had paid attention, and I had finally acted. But it wasn't over. 3 days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It wasn't handwritten. it wasn't casual. It was typed, formal, printed on legal letterhead, and signed by an attorney I didn't recognize, one hired by my mother. The letter claimed emotional distress. It argued that as a direct descendant, my mother had a moral and familial entitlement to the estate. It accused me of causing her psychological harm by excluding her and demanded compensation for the pain I had allegedly inflicted. Attached to the letter was a list titled Reasonable Reparations. $150, no in cash. Joint ownership of the family home. A monthly financial allowance, effective immediately until further notice. I stared at the page for a long time. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I read it again, thinking maybe I was misunderstanding something. I read it a third time, then a fourth. By the sixth read, there was no room left for denial. My own mother had signed her name to a legal document demanding payment because I wouldn't let her steal what my grandparents left to me. The money itself wasn't what shook me. It was the entitlement, the audacity to frame this as a misunderstanding one day, and a financial demand the next, to turn love and family into an invoice. The phrase that echoed in my mind was familial obligation, as if loyalty only flowed upward, as if my purpose had always been to give and never to protect myself. I didn't respond. I knew better than to answer emotionally. Instead, I called Mr. Levan, who referred me to an estate attorney named Sonia Cruz. She was in her early 40s, calm, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. She didn't posture. She didn't bluff. She simply listened. He sent her everything: the trust documentation, the fraudulent title attempt, the demand letter, screenshots of Tyler's social media posts. Within 24 hours, Sonia issued a formal cease and desist to both my mother and Tyler. The message was direct. The trust was legally sealed, and neither of them had standing to challenge it. But she didn't stop there. She dug deeper. Sonia uncovered that Tyler had forged multiple signatures during the attempted title transfer. He had even used a counterfeit notary stamp and filed the documents through a questionable online registry in another state. Hoping it wouldn't be flagged by our county, she contacted a fraud investigator at the district attorney's office. As it turned out, that registry was already under investigation for similar filings. Tyler had just made himself very visible. He still hadn't told them. I knew. If they wanted to keep pushing, I was content to let them keep digging, and they did. 2 weeks after this cease and desist was delivered, another letter arrived. This one didn't come from a law firm. It was typed, but unmistakably my mother's voice, layered with passive aggression and guilt disguised as concern. She wrote about everything she had sacrificed for me, about how I had always been the quiet, obedient one, about how she had raised me to be better than this. She ended the letter with a line that stuck with me. You can end all of this right now by simply doing the right thing. She followed it with another familiar refrain. Family shouldn't need lawyers. Love and understanding should be enough to resolve things like this. I didn't reply. Sonia advised me not to. Instead, I forwarded the letter to her, and she added it to the growing file we were building. She told me plainly that if the harassment continued, we would already have the foundation for a restraining order. Then something else happened. One morning, as I stepped outside to check the mail, I found a folded piece of paper wedged into the handle of my front door. No envelope, no address. Just jammed there like a taunt. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Tyler's. The note read, "Hope you're enjoying playing King of the Castle. Just remember who's really got your back when the money runs dry." He laughed, not loudly, not with humor, but with the kind of exhausted amusement that comes when someone truly doesn't understand how far they've already lost control. He scanned the note, saved a copy, and added it to the file. That was the moment I stopped thinking defensively. Until then, I had only been protecting what was mine, holding the line. But now I realized something important. If I didn't push back, they wouldn't stop. And Tyler was already under scrutiny for fraud. Sonia pointed out something else. If we could establish intentional harassment or malice, the consequences could escalate quickly. Criminal courts would handle part of it, but there were other ways to apply pressure. His credit, his professional record, his career. Tyler had recently landed a job at a boutique real estate firm, one of those glossy companies that bragged about transparency and ethics while marketing themselves aggressively online. They claimed to pride themselves on clean property transfers and compliance, which made me wonder. Would they still be proud if they knew one of their agents had tried to steal a house using forged documents? I didn't act right away. I waited. And then something unexpected happened. My cousin, Megan, reached out to me. Megan messaged me out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken in years, not because of conflict, but because life had simply drifted us apart. Her message was short and direct. "Hey, can we talk? Your mom has been calling people. She's saying some things you should know about." We met for coffee the next morning. Megan hadn't changed much. Still blunt, still practical. The kind of person who didn't waste words trying to soften reality. She didn't ease into it or dance around the issue. She opened her phone and showed me everything. Text messages, voicemails, screenshots from a family group chat. According to my mother, I had manipulated my grandfather during his final years. She claimed I pressured him into changing the will while he was mentally declining. She hinted, never outright stated, but clearly implied that I had taken advantage of him emotionally, legally, possibly even medically. It was a full-scale smear campaign. My stomach turned as I listened to the recordings. Hearing her voice twist reality so casually made me feel physically sick. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was rewriting history. Megan looked at me across the table. "I don't believe her," she said. "Neither Jamie or Chris. But she's not going to stop. She's calling everyone." I nodded slowly, my chest tight. "Thank you for telling me." That night, I barely slept. Because that was when it finally clicked. This was no longer about the house. It wasn't even about the money. It was about control. My mother couldn't accept that I had said no, that I had protected something from her. And now, she was trying to destroy my reputation to force compliance. If I let her succeed, I knew exactly what would follow. Pressure, whispers, relatives urging me to be the bigger person. Eventually, they'd push me into giving something up just to restore peace. I saw the trap clearly, and I decided I wasn't going to fall into it. The next 2 days, I barely left my study. By then, the trust itself was untouchable. But reputations were fragile, and my mother was attacking mine with intent. Messages from distant relatives started coming in. Just checking in. Heard some concerning things. Hope it's not true. She had been busy. With Sonia's help, I prepared a formal declaration of facts. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't defensive. It was precise, methodical, and supported by evidence. The forged title application, the fake notary stamp, the attempted property seizure, the cease and desist letters, the $150 demand. I included screenshots from Megan, voicemails from my mother, Tyler's note from my door. Then I made a choice. I didn't hide it in a filing cabinet. I sent it to every relative my mother had contacted, 27 people, along with a short message. I know some things have been said about me recently. Before you form an opinion, I want you to have the facts, documents, not stories. After this, I won't debate it. Believe what you want, but at least decide with the full truth. Then I hit send. The fallout was immediate. The responses came faster than I expected. Within hours, my phone started lighting up with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were cautious, some were stunned. A few were openly apologetic. One of the first calls came from my Aunt Robin. She had always adored Tyler, treated him like he could do no wrong. When I answered, she was crying. She told me she had believed every word my mother said until she saw the documents, the forged signatures, the legal demand, the paper trail that couldn't be explained away. I didn't know, she kept repeating. I swear I didn't know. He told her she didn't owe me anything. Understanding was enough. Not everyone reacted that way. 3 relatives, all firmly on my mother's side, doubled down. They accused me of manipulating the situation. One even claimed I had fabricated the evidence entirely. He knew then that some people weren't interested in truth. They were invested in the version of reality that felt safest to them. I let them go. For every person who resisted, there were 5 more who reached out to thank me for being honest. And then I made the move I'd been quietly preparing for. I submitted a report to Tyler's employer. At first, it was anonymous. He used their internal ethics channel and attached a meticulously organized PDF, clearly labeled it exhibits, timelines, and supporting documentation. No opinions, no accusations, just facts. The forged title transfer attempt, the misuse of legal documents, the potential criminal implications, the risk to the firm's reputation. I assumed it would take a week to be reviewed. It took 2 days. By the end of that week, Tyler's name disappeared from the company website. A contact of mine, someone I knew from college, who now worked in compliance at the local real estate association, confirmed what happened next. The firm launched an internal audit immediately. And once they started looking, they found more problems. Inconsistencies in client files, questionable documentation, sloppy records that suggested this wasn't an isolated incident. Tyler wasn't just fired. He was reported. His real estate license was frozen pending investigation. The day it happened, my phone showed 11 missed calls from his number. I didn't answer a single one. That weekend, he posted a black screen on Instagram with white text. Some people will destroy your life and pretend they're the victim. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. Everyone who mattered already knew the truth. But the story still wasn't finished, because 2 days later, I received formal notice from the county. A warrant was being issued. The forged title application had triggered real legal consequences. Tyler was being charged with attempted property fraud and submission of falsified documents to a government agency. He stared at the notice for a long time. This wasn't what I wanted. I never set out to ruin him. But he had pushed, lied, and escalated until consequences were unavoidable. He was arraigned quietly. No headlines, no spectacle. Just a court date, a lawyer he could barely afford, and a future shadowed by a permanent record. He likely wouldn't see prison, probation, fines, maybe community service, but the damage was done. That record would follow him. After Tyler's charges became official, my mother went silent, completely silent. No calls, no messages, no apologies, no more demons. Weeks passed, then months. And finally, one afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail, not from her, but from her attorney. The wording was careful, neutral, stripped of emotion. It stated that she was formally withdrawing all pending claims related to the estate and respectfully requested no further contact. In other words, she was done. She had lost. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel satisfied. What I felt, more than anything else, was relief. A deep, unfamiliar sense of release, like something heavy had finally been lifted from my chest. That evening, I went to the house. He walked through the rooms slowly, barefoot against the polished hardwood floors. The air carried the faint scent of cedar and old books. Everything was quiet, peaceful. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. He stopped in the den, where my grandfather used to sit in his worn leather chair, reading the paper every morning. He stood there for a long moment, then spoke softly into the stillness. I kept it safe, just like I promised. I think he would have been proud. In the end, I didn't just keep the house. I kept my dignity. I kept my future. Tyler lost his career. My mother lost her narrative, and I gained something they never expected me to find. The strength to stop being their victim. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one anymore.